Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Roman Widen, an award-winning filmmaker, entrepreneur, and life coach. He has worked on a wide range of creative projects, from documentaries and feature films to commercial work with major brands. But more recently, his focus has shifted towards something more personal after his son was diagnosed with ADHD. Roman began questioning the traditional narrative around the condition, which led him to create the ADHD is Over project, including a podcast, documentary, and upcoming book. Through that work, is exploring alternative perspectives on ADHD, parenting, and what it really means to support children in a way that helps them thrive. Roman, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hello, Joy. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. So before we, dive deep into what you're doing now, I would like for us to go back to your 20s, right? So, yeah, what were you focused on in your 20s and how did you get into filmmaking?
Yeah, I'm going to share it not without some embarrassment looking back, right? And that's not to say that uh, people are following in my footsteps and will be embarrassed in their 50s. Not everybody will be. But for me in my 20s, it was all about me. It was about, and part of it is natural, right? It's you're discovering the world. Who am I? What do I want to do? So for me, it was all about having fun. I loved fast cars. I liked really cool clothing, brand clothing, Adidas, Boss, whatever back then was in, right? I also was into women. I had a lot of relationships. I was like a serial monogamist. I would have one girlfriend after another girlfriend after another girlfriend. And that's something that I learned over time as I was getting older, that it was just my way of trying to avoid really being with myself, my, true self. So in my 20s were very kind of fast, loud, fun, party. I did work as well, but it was really to make work, to make money, to then have fun, right? So that sums it up in three letters in a nutshell.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, I would like to ask, right? So, were there any like key challenges or turning points in your early career?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things to add to that is that I grew up in Switzerland. And when I turned 18, I had to go to the mandatory Swiss Army service. And after that, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And my parents said, you should go to college. And I did a little bit of college, but then I realized I don't know what I want to do. But I also know that it's not going to be in Switzerland in this sort of typical structure of graduate school, get a job, career, climb up the ladder, make more money, get more stuff, and then hopefully be happy. I knew that wasn't for me. So I left to the United States when I was 22. And I came over here and I was very naive. I was like, well, I think I want to go be an actor. And the reason why I did that is because when I was in, let's see, 21, I took a job for, I don't know if you know Club Med, but it's like this company that has all these resorts around the world. And you can go to these resorts, and there's always a staff of entertainers, like a DJ, a sports person. There's a few people who do like shows at night. It's basically entertaining the guests at a resort. So I did that for a year, which was amazing. And I saved some money, but I knew that like I liked performing. I was a DJ and I liked to, bring entertainment to people. So something in me said, "Hey, why don't I go to Hollywood and I try to be an actor?" So I did that when I was 22, I came to the United States and I started taking some acting classes, and it was really hard because I thought there was going to be five schools and a few hundred students, right? But it was like hundreds of schools just in one city, and thousands of people who wanted to be actors. So I started doing that work, and it was hard, because every time you go to an audition, you interview, they say you're too short, you're too tall, you're too fat, you have an accent, you're too this, you're too skinny, you're too, like, it's almost like a beating up of your personality and who you are. So after a while, I was like, it's too much. I think I'm going to start making films instead of being in films. So that's when I decided to go to film school and learn how to make films. And I had already made some films, some little short films. And I went to a very prestigious school in Pasadena, which is around Los Angeles, California. It's called the Art Center College of Design. And I learned how to produce films and, really in detail. Um, and to jump forward, I then started a production company after I graduated college, which now I'm 37 years old, right? So I went back to school when I was 34. So from my 20s to my sort of early 30s, I tried to be an actor. I tried to, make it in the business, had a little bit of success. But then once I went to film school, after film school, I learned how to produce commercials and music videos and films. And so that's kind of my early film career, if you will.
All right. So yeah, from your story, I see that it's okay as young adults to try new things, right? You were
Absolutely.
willing to try multiple things. It's not like you had it all figured out from the beginning, like, you know what, I'm gonna be a movie producer or a
No,
filmmaker, right? It wasn't like that.
exactly.
Exactly. So you had to try new things till you got to the one that, was for you, right? Which was the filmmaking. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
just learned, and I hope my listeners learn more. So now I want
Yeah.
us to do a deep dive into what you're doing now, right? So your
Yeah.
work,
And if I
yeah.
may, Joy, just one last thing, because I sometimes get caught up in telling the story, right?
Mhm.
But I want to make sure your listeners get some value in terms of the lessons I've learned, and I keep it short. But I learned that you're either in three categories. You're either the person that's going to do what the parents want you to do and society wants you to do, right? Oh, you should be a lawyer, you should be a dentist. So you're going to either be that person, or the second category is you're going to be the person that says, I know exactly what I want to do since age 7. Like, let's take Messi, the soccer player, for example, right? He knew what he wanted to do, he did it. That's all he wanted to do. So you're either in the first category, do what everyone else wants you to do. The second category is you know what you want to do. Or the third category, which was where I was in, which is I don't really know what I want to do, but I know I'm not going to do what my parents want me to do or my society wants me to do. And since I don't know what it is that I want to do like Messi does, I'm just going to keep trying things out and see what I don't like and what's not me. So they call that here process of elimination, right? You try something, you go, no, not really. Try that. Next, no, don't like it, right? And it's hard to do that because a lot of people will tell you, come on, just pick something, just settle, just do it. And I'm 56 years old and I'm still reinventing myself now. And we'll get into that, but I just want to let young people know, don't worry if you're in that category that I was in, right? Because it's the hardest category to be in because you have to just keep going and try out new things and see what fits, what's aligned with you, who you are. And that takes time and that takes effort. But I believe ultimately that brings the most fulfillment in life. So,
All right. Wow. Okay. So thank you, Roman. Right.
yeah,
This has been amazing. I feel like I've learned a lot, right? And understanding some certain things, because we as young adults, if we feel this way, we tend to feel like, oh, since I don't know what I'm doing, I'm probably losing, right? They feel like they are losers
yeah,
and stuff like. But it's okay to know that yes, it doesn't matter if you don't know what you're doing or if you don't know what you want, rather. But then what matters is that you keep on trying multiple things. You never know what could work out for you. So yeah,
yeah,
thank you so much
yeah.
for that. And yeah, we're gonna do a deep dive into what you're doing now. your
Great.
work today is centered around the idea that ADHD is over. So, what do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
Great question. Yeah. So, in a nutshell, 10 years ago, my oldest son, who's now 17, so 10 years ago, he was 7, he was diagnosed here in the United States with what we call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And in a nutshell, for people who are not too familiar, it basically is seen as a person who has a hard time focusing, who keeps fidgeting and not being present, who is impulsive, and so forth, right? So we're looking at this as a disorder, which means there's something wrong with the person, right? And we are saying, or they are saying, there's something wrong with the person's brain. So to me at the time, I didn't buy that. Something felt off. I thought, that's not who my son is. And also, mind you, he's 7 years old, right? A 7 year old is very young, you know, and uh, you're just exploring life, and of course, you don't want to sit still, sit in a chair for 8 hours a day, and learn stuff that's boring. Who I don't even want to do that as an adult, right? So, um, I just said, no, I don't believe it. I'm going to start doing more research. And I started doing research in all areas, not just ADHD, which is a lot of experts do that. Stay stuck researching only in this specific area, right? But I wanted to look at parenting and school and distractions and diet and marriage and all the things that bring essentially can bring stress to a child's nervous system. So I wanted to know, like, how can we remove the most amount of stress from all areas of our child's life to see if he would get better. And he did. Over time, again, it was a process of elimination. It wasn't like, oh, let's do this. And we always said we're not going to do medication because those medications are very strong. They are the United States Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, lists it on their website as a Schedule II drug in the same category for highly addictive as cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. So parents have to know that if you're giving your child ADHD medication, you're giving it a very strong drug, a very addictive drug. And I didn't want to do that. So we just tried everything else. And basically, what I discovered is that it's really about a child feeling safe, safe enough, and interested enough in a moment, whether it's a human being or a lesson in school or interacting with the world. If they don't feel safe or interested, they don't want to be here. They want to be over there. They want to be anywhere else but here, right? And so we say, "Oh, you can't pay attention. You can't be here. You're distracted by the shiny object." It's like, yeah, because here doesn't feel safe and here is not interesting and here is boring or whatever. I want to be over there. So to me, in a nutshell, I'm not saying that's all ADHD is, but it is to me coming down to childhood trauma, things that happen in childhood, so the child doesn't feel safe in the moment and can't focus.
All right, wow. Okay, so what do you think are some like biggest assumptions people make about ADHD that you believe needs to be challenged?
Yeah. And it's great. And I realized you asked the question earlier also, why is it called ADHD is over and what do I mean? Um, Apologies for not addressing that directly, but I'm getting there because ultimately, for me and my son, ADHD is over, meaning he doesn't believe he has ADHD. He doesn't take medication. He never uses it as an excuse. So for us, it's over. And the whole point of the movement is to let parents know if you want it to be over, you can have it be over too, because then you can focus on the struggles, not the label. And the book I wrote, ADHD's Over, says the struggle is real, right? People do struggle with attention and impulsivity, and so I do sometimes. It's real. But the label ADHD that we've created, those 4 letters that we put together, that label is not real. It's made up. So if we can take that off and say, what are you struggling with, right? Then we have something we can do about it. We have an action plan. If we say, oh, you have ADHD and it's genetic, sorry, that's just what you have. the only action plan there for most people is take medication. Um, so, how do we, what are the beliefs, right? What are the sort of, I call them half truths, right? So let's start with genetic. People hear, oh, ADHD is genetic. That's not 100% true. It's true that there's a gene, there's no ADHD gene, by the way, just want people to know that does not exist. So when we say it's genetic, there's no gene for ADHD. How can it be genetic? Well, there is a gene. Um, I can't remember the exact term, but there's a gene considered the sensitivity gene. And most likely, I believe that humans that are diagnosed with ADHD have a sensitivity issue. Meaning, when I say issue, I don't mean it's bad. They just have a more sensitive system. So they're more sensitive to noise and smell and touch, all the senses, right? Even the sixth sense, they can perceive things. Just like autistic children are said to have these extra perception, ability. So to me, if there's a gene, that would be the gene. But it's not genetic because we have learned from epigenetics. It's a study that's called epigenetics. And they realized that the brain develops in the relationship with the environment, right? From the outside, what's happening outside, the brain develops. And also, what's happening outside in our environment can actually turn on or off a gene. So even if you had a gene, let's say there was a gene for ADHD, right? Let's just assume for a moment, you could still turn that off or on by what's happening in your life. So in other words, it's not genetic in a way that there's nothing you can do about it. We actually can do a lot about it. So that's why it's not really handed down genetically. It's more like in the environment of the family. So maybe if the father was very not present and stressed and then the child picks that up, but it's not through the gene, the DNA, it's more of the environment that affected it. I know that's a long answer, but that's just to say, when we hear it's genetic, parents go, oh, nothing I can do. That's just not true. Another one is that you have ADHD for life. It's a life sentence. You just have it, right? Well, first of all, that's not true because we have learned that we can rewire the brain into old age. So, what we call symptoms for ADHD, like hyperactivity, can't focus, impulsivity, those things are actually just observed behaviors, right? We call them symptoms, but what it means is somebody's watching you, let's say you, Joy, you can't sit still, you're moving around. They go, oh, I see, you're hyperactive, right? But that's your behavior. But we can change behavior neurologically by rewiring the brain. So it's not fair to say you have it for life or it's a life sentence because that's just not true, right? So that's a second one. I'll just do one more, which is ADHD. People say, I have ADHD. And I always say, you can't have ADHD. It's not a thing. Where is it? Well, it's in my brain. Well, like where? Well, it's how my brain is wired. Oh, okay. So it's your brain wiring. So again, that can be rewired. So it's not like a tumor in the brain, right? If you have a tumor in the brain, you can find it, cut it out, and every doctor, whether you're in New York, Amsterdam, Los Angeles, Kenya, wherever you are, can look at that tumor and through blood tests or biomarkers can say, oh, that's a tumor that was found in the brain. But with ADHD, there's no blood tests, there's no biomarkers, there's no essentially global agreement that it is a medical disorder. It's really just a psychiatric disorder based on observation, not based on actual medical dissection, if you will.
Right, wow. Oof,
It's a
okay,
lot.
it is, but talking about ADHD, right? I just want to say this, yeah.
Yeah.
I think people treat ADHD as something very bad. Like once they say you're diagnosed with ADHD, it's almost like a stigma or something. But then the next thing they start to administer drugs to you, medication and stuff like that. So over here in Nigeria, right, what we have noticed is a whole lot of people, if you're to diagnose, right, 60% of people, 60% of people here, they have ADHD, right? But we don't see it as a problem. We just see it as a behavioral pattern, right? You have ADHD, just try focusing, right? We do not consider it a problem.
Mm.
What we see it as is, okay, I can't focus. I need to rewire my brain. Like you said, it's a wiring. You can actually rewire your brain to focus more. And it's just
Yeah.
like a behavioral pattern. It's what I think, right? It's a behavioral pattern and you can control it. You can decide to do whatever you want to do. It doesn't you don't have to diagnose or take medications for ADHD. It's not that
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
That is what I think, actually.
That's great to hear. So so you have it in Nigeria, but and it's called ADHD, but it's not a problem enough for people to turn to like drugs, right?
Yeah. It's not like they were diagnosed, right? But like you said, when
Yeah,
someone is diagnosed of ADHD, it's not the person diagnosing themselves, it's someone else observing, right? So
exactly.
when you
Exactly.
observe people, you notice that pattern. Like it seems you have ADHD, it seems you have this, but these people are not aware they have such. And if you do that observation, a whole lot of people do have ADHD, if we are to
Exactly.
go by the metrics, but they
Yeah.
do not see it as a problem.
Yeah.
They
That's
see it
great.
as something that, okay, it can be, we can work on it, we can rewire our brains, right? So the whole ADHD is over. To them, it's actually over. It's something you would
Yeah.
outgrow, right? So
That's
I
great.
think some people should adopt that mentality. Don't just take your child to the hospital and start administering medications. Some of those medications might end up affecting the children, right? And even
Yeah.
give them something worse than the diagnosis. So sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
just rewire your brain. That's all. That's all it takes.
Absolutely. That's really great to hear. And I'll tell you why, because you said something really great, right? So they don't think they have ADHD. They just say, I have a hard time with focusing, right? But the more in the United States, the more people kept hearing television commercials or celebrities on social media saying, I have ADHD because I struggle with this, right? So they would
Mhm.
come to the doctor and say, oh, I have ADHD. And the doctor would say, how come? Why do you say that? Well, because I have trouble focusing, I'm impulsive, hyperactive, right? They would list the symptoms. But the thing is, if they didn't know what that was and no one did, like in your country, and they just came up to somebody and said, oh, it seems like you're having a hard time focusing, then the person would say, yeah, I do. And then we'd be like, okay, well, let's look at how we can help you focus. That's it. There's no other
Exactly.
discussion that has to be had, right? Because the moment you go to a disorder, you're essentially kind of saying, I'm a little bit of a victim of this thing. I can't really do life the way it's designed to do because I have that thing, right? And then really how I can get there is with the medication they've told me. And suddenly you have millions of people addicted. I mean, there's a lot of people that are addicted to these drugs because without them, they can no longer function because they've trained their system that they need an external drug so that they can function in this society to do the job that they think they should be doing, right? So it's a whole cycle that can never end suddenly, and that's dangerous, you know? And I will
Yes,
say,
I think you said it perfectly.
you know what?
You just said it perfectly, exactly what I was trying to relay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one thing that I've recently come to terms with myself, and I believe, I have these insights that I have, and then a couple years later, somebody will say it, some expert will write a book on it, and I go, oh, see, yes, I've had that thought. And it's pretty simple. I feel that ADHD, what it actually is a matter of misalignment. When we are not fully aligned with who we are and what we're here to do in this lifetime on this planet, and that sounds maybe a little spiritual, but I do believe that. If there's a misalignment, then we show these symptoms of like can't focus, impulsive, hyperactive, because we're not aligned. We're not actually doing what we're supposed to do, our purpose, right? And I believe that the people, even if they're diagnosed with ADHD, but that find their purpose and they do their work. Yes, of course, nobody wants to do taxes and pay the bills and all that stuff, but you can still do it. It's not that big of a deal. Even if you procrastinate for 2, 3 days or a week or a month, it's fine. It's being human. But essentially, I believe that ADHD would be gone if more people are, and also a lot of mental disorders like depression, anxiety, all that stuff, if we're really aligned in doing what we're here to do. That's my belief.
Exactly. You know, I think you're right, actually. I think you're right. And yeah, it's important to let people know, right? Um, and this is just to my listeners, yeah. If you've been diagnosed with ADHD before, I think you should try to rewire your brain, right? If you feel your brain is wired a certain way, there can always be a rewire. Um, Also, don't be a victim of what people tell you you have. Just outgrow that victim mindset. I feel like if some people want to hear they've been diagnosed with ADHD, they start to live that way. I'm like, oh, they said I can't do this, so therefore I can't do it. No, you can. You can't do it. It's left for you to decide if you want to do it or not. So yes, do not be a victim of whatever you've been diagnosed with, as long as it's something you can work on. Right. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my take on that. Thank you so much,
That's
Roman.
that's
This has
great.
been
Yeah.
amazing.
I just want to say, people might be wondering, right? It's such a big term. How do I rewire my brain? You know,
Mhm.
don't look at it as this big undertaking, this almost neuroscientific way of using machines or expensive therapy or all that. How you can look at it is more like change your habits, right? So maybe Google or use ChatGPT or whatever you use to research. Google how to change your habits, right? And there's certain philosophies that it takes 30 days or 60 days to have. And so start changing things in life that are habits that don't support you focusing, or habits that don't allow you to slow down, or habits that they don't allow you to stay quiet. For example, meditation, right? If you start meditating, you slow down, you're quiet, you're more focused essentially already because you're in the moment, you're forcing yourself not to think or act. So do that for 30 days or 60 days and see what happens, right? So we slowly rewire our brains by changing our habits that don't allow us to focus. That's really, more bite size. You can do that little by little, and eventually that rewires
Mhm.
your life, right? Your brain.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Roman. This has been amazing, I must say. And yeah, it moves me to, ask this question, right, on your journey and your perspective. So, what are you hoping to achieve? Although I know we've spoken a whole lot about ADHD, but what are you hoping to achieve with the ADHDs over documentary and book? And what are you currently focused on building right now?
Yeah, I'm basically hoping that the documentary, the podcast, and the book go out, and that parents of children with ADHD can find some information that they can't find in the mainstream, that they can find some hope, you
Mhm.
know, that they will be able to help their children live a more focused life, less stress, rewire their brains, and live happier lives. That's my wish for this project. And any listener can reach out to me through our website, adhdsover.com, and just email me, and I'd be happy to help them kickstart their healing journey.
All right. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Roman. This has been
Thank you, Joy.
amazing. My guest just joined. All right. And
All
to my
good.
listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Roman. Do have a wonderful day.
Bye, Joy. Thank